I'm pretty much a Colorado native. I was born in Arizona and then we moved out here before I even really remember. I remember small things about Arizona. And so I grew up in Colorado Springs, and DYAO was a wonderful part of my young musician life. It really introduced me to, um, gosh, so much orchestral repertoire. I think back in the day, we used to rehearse. I don't know if you guys still rehearse over at it was at the university, or the Metropolitan. What's that? What's that? It's not coming to my head, but there was a school we would rehearse at, and it was always great because we were associated with DU to a certain extent, and there were a lot of college kids in the group at the time too, and so it really kind of hit the ground running, and just the types of programs you would do. I mean, we played with Kathy Lee Gifford. We played. I mean, and I hear you guys are doing so many things that are just great for you. And I think that's the important thing that I really wanted to just talk with you guys about, was just what it takes nowadays to be a musician in this world. Because I think there are so many opportunities, and oftentimes, especially as an orchestral trumpet player, and I'm going to ask each of you as we go along kind of what you feel like your goal is and what you're trying to move towards. But, for me as a trumpet player, as I was coming up, I felt like I wanted to do one thing, and what I found as I got into college and out of college and into grad school, and you kind of branch out like a tree, right? And the more open to that tree you are, the more opportunities you have within music, right? But the second that you sort of limit yourself is the second you limit yourself, right? You're kind of really in some ways saying no. And it's not that that's bad. Like, if you know without a doubt what you want to do, especially trumpet wise, that's a great thing, right? I wanted to be a soloist as I was growing up, and DYAO gave me that opportunity with the Colorado Symphony, which really I fell in love with. I mean, in reality, and from there it just kind of furthered, right? So my opportunities came from that. But what my mentors have always told me, and still to this day, I speak with them often, and what they say is, when you keep yourself open for opportunity, it isn't that you're going to veer off and become something else. It's just you're going to widen what you already are, right? So I used to be afraid of, really, honestly, afraid of listening as a composer to other music, because I would be like, oh no, I'm going to write like this person, or I'm going to, write that same piece. And in reality, what I found in my time in music is that it isn't that. It's that, some of your mind works in mysterious ways, and you'll start to pick up things, and you'll realize you're being influenced by things that intrigue you, right? So on the trumpet, I studied with Wynton Marsalis, and still talk with him often, from when I was right around 13 years old. I used to hear him play jazz all the time, right? I would go and spend time with him. We had family in New York, and we would, anytime we would go out there, I would go and listen to him, right? And most of the time, he was there with his jazz groups playing jazz, and I had never really immersed myself in jazz. It wasn't, we didn't, it's not that we didn't have a jazz program in high school, we did. But I was never part of it because I had kind of veered myself in the soloist route, right? But it was always there. And I mean, when I think about how I expanded as a player over time, it was really in that way. It was through listening and realizing, wait, jazz is another way I can express my playing, and I can solo in jazz, and I can, right? So it's still related to that main road. It's just something different. And for you guys, as you're thinking about stuff, I would challenge you, especially musically, to do the things musically that maybe scare you a little bit, because those are the things you're uncomfortable with, right? So when I first came back to Colorado Springs, I was asked to play in like a rock band, and I thought, okay, I've never really done that before, right? But those are those things that as you do them, now it's one more facet for you to be hired on, right? And most of what we do as musicians, we really are. I mean, unless we get hired into an orchestra or we get, hired by a school or things like that. We are freelance, right? We make our lives from what we find around us. Yeah. And sometimes that could be a scary thing, because that's the thing in school, especially in college, as you get in, you want to keep that in mind, right? Like, how am I going to make a life for myself out of this, right? And it's not, don't think anything's too crazy, because really it always boils down to what you love and what you want to do. Yeah. So I guess my main point being, keep an open mind. If you've got a path that you're at right now and you're like, oh, I really love doing this, keep after it, but keep an open mind with it, because the future of music for us musicians, I mean, how many things do we see now on Zoom happening? And that was never something I would have, thought about. I never would have thought, well, let's put a, jazz sextet together online. Right? That's not something I would have thought about doing, but if you're open to it, then that's now another thing you can do, right? It's like, well, we can do online concerts. We can do, right? We can stream a concert on Facebook, or we can, right? All these things, the more adaptable we are, et cetera. So, okay, enough about that. So let's talk about, I want to just ask each of you before we go along, and maybe MaKenna, we can start with you, and just ask you a little bit about, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but like, what you're aiming for, what has you interested in trumpet? What has you interested in music? Do you have like a path that you feel like you're taking, that kind of thing?
Well, my mom's a music teacher, so I like music probably because, well, she teaches lots of music lessons and all that. So, and I just like how she has like, I don't know if it's like a genetic thing that I just like music, because her main instrument is also the trumpet.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But I did start with the clarinet, and I did not like the clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard my mom once practicing the trumpet, and I wanted to try it out. And so, yeah.
What do you love about the trumpet? What is it that you adore about it?
I like the graceful sound of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like with classical music, with the graceful sound, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, so those are the things to think about, right? For all three of you, is like, well, what do you want to sound like? So we can get ideas from that by stuff like what MaKenna just said, right? What she appreciates about the instrument is going to be in some ways, what she enjoys doing on the instrument, right? Like, if she can sound as graceful as possible on it, that's going to be something that, right, is fulfilling for her, right? How about you, Annabella? Same question.
Let me know if you can hear me, because I
Yeah.
can't really hear you guys, but all right. So I don't know, for me it's been more of that the trumpet teaches me rather than I'm learning about it. So I think just generally I try to enjoy the creative process.
All right, Sophie, how about you?
For me, trumpet kind of started as a toy.
I
My
like it.
mom played through college, so her trumpet was in our closet, and I just picked it up for fun when I was 5 and just played a concert with my grandma. And that was just a lot of fun, and so I've always enjoyed doing that. I really like classical. Like, I play jazz, but I'm not very good at it, and so I like classical more. And I think I just like the classical pieces more. I didn't have a long attention span when I was younger, so it was hard to listen to a jazz piece. It's definitely gotten better. I appreciate jazz now. But yeah, and I think I just love it because it's an outlet for me. I'm kind of a quiet person in general, and so trumpet's a way I can express myself.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a pretty quiet person too. I've learned to force myself not to be, right? It's hard as a musician because you're right. I mean, when you get behind your instrument, you can be whatever you want to be, right? And I guess the reality is we can outside of that too, but there's something different about being able to speak a different language, right, through music, and it does do something different. So Sophie, you mentioned the collaboration, and then let's see, Annabella, did we get your audio in working over there? Well, I would love to, Annabella, for you to, if you can, in the chat, to type me you started beginning about the creative process and the trumpet teaching you as opposed to you learning the trumpet. Love to know more about what the trumpet has taught you, and then a little bit more about kind of your love for music and what has you going. Well, cool. So this is a great start here. So I'm hearing good things. So these adjectives you use that describe your love for music, those are the things you really want to nurture. It's interesting because we're very lucky. I mean, everyone on here obviously loves and adores music in some capacity, right? And performs. And if we think about that in our lives, especially I think about it in my life, I feel very blessed to have that opportunity, and in some ways, it is sort of like a really sort of sacred flame in a way that you want to nurture and make sure it doesn't get blown out. And so by doing that, you have to kind of just be good to yourself, right? So a big part of practice, and that was what I kind of wanted to get into next, and I promise I won't blabber the whole time here. But I wanted to learn a little bit about how you guys practice. Like, what do you practice? How do you go about it? And I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but it's helping me understand you guys a little bit more. So let's start. Sophie, I have you on the screen. So let's start with you. How do you practice? What's your way of going about practicing?
Typically I do like a warm-up fundamental session, but I like to think of it as like a 3-minute warm-up, and then I go into technique. Because otherwise I feel like, I don't know, I get stuck then when I don't have a chance to do that session and I'm not able to play. So mentally, that's what I do. And then I usually do 1 or 2 more sessions throughout the day. I try to do 3. I'd like to say I do 3, but I have too much schoolwork right now.
It's hard to balance. It is. And the weird thing is it doesn't get any easier in college, and it doesn't get any easier in outside of school either. It's just, and you're doing exactly what you want to be doing is scheduling time and scheduling time for it. That's the first thing. Sometimes I'll get people that say, I don't have time to practice. And I say, how about 5 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? Yeah, I've got 5 minutes. Well, do 5 minutes every day, and that'll add up over a week, right? It's like you'll have done 35 minutes or whatever it is. So being able to just schedule that time it's great. And then there's a book that's called Mastery, and it's all about how it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? So these virtuoso violinists and pianists and different things, right, that I can play 10, 12 hours a day. If you think about what that adds up to and how you get to that 10,000 hours, right? They say the same thing about John Coltrane, the great musicians, is that it doesn't really matter how gifted you are at something. It's the 10,000 hours, and that's sort of like what they've boiled it down to. So if you do an hour every day, right, it's gonna take you 10,000 days. Yeah. So it's. I mean, that doesn't. When I first heard people say that, I was like, oh, that's kind of depressing to think about. But like, it's not. It's exciting because the more work you put in, like you're saying, the more scheduled work you put in, the more regular work you put in. Yeah, that definitely puts you in a good place. So awesome, 3-minute warm up, and then straight into kind of more technique and stuff is kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, right now my practicing's been a little off because I'm recording pre-screenings, so I've been doing a lot more of the recording than of actual practicing. But
Got it.
I try to, when it's a good day and I have to record something, I try to practice that in my first session and then do completely different music in the second and or third session so I don't burn out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an important piece of it we'll get into for sure. You don't want to burn yourself out because then practice becomes just a dreaded thing to do. Yeah. All right. How about Annabella? How about you? How's stuff functioning over there?
Um,
There you are. We hear you. You're back.
awesome.
So talk to
Uh,
me about your practice. Like how do you practice? What's your way of practicing?
okay. My way of practicing.
Uh-oh. We lost you again.
Great about being virtual is being able to kind of choose, where you want to incorporate music. So if we have a break between classes, it's really easy to um, reach over to my piano and play a little bit or compose or, practice chord progressions. So it's been really nice.
That is great. So if I understand you right, just kind of you find free time anywhere you can kind of get it to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it has to be, very structured, like, oh, I need to, practice this piece and this can.
Yeah, we still have a little bit of maybe connectivity issues, and totally understandable. So don't stress. But I think what you said is good, and we'll keep talking about that as we go along here as well, because I do want to leave time to play. But yes, I think unstructured time practicing can be great, and I think everyone should do that for sure. You want to have that time that where it's not rigid and it has to be any one thing. As a composer myself, I know that I love that. I adore it. The thought that like I can choose a time to write and it can be random. It can be when today I was writing a song, just randomly. It just right. This stuff just comes to us sometimes, and having the ability to do that is good. On the flip side of that, like the proponents of structure are all about how the body functions as a mechanism in so many ways, right? And so playing at the same time of the day or doing right these routines that you can create for yourself, you're able to sort of control to a certain extent the end result of things by doing something the same way, right? And that could be a danger too, because for instance, if I pick up my horn and I decide I'm going to hold it like this, and I do that for 2 years straight or something, I've now created a 2-year habit of doing something that maybe isn't helpful for me, right? So there's some truth to what you're saying there as well in regards to I would say that's a form of improvisation, being able to improvise, being able to adapt and change. And that's an important part of music, and it's an important part about learning this instrument too, right? Because we are our habits, we become those things, right? So if you're someone who practices your trumpet and you're kind of slunched over and you create sort of an unhealthy scenario for yourself, then you will get very good at playing that way, right? And the reality is that playing that way sometimes isn't the freest, most open way you can play. And that brings us to an interesting point here in general about practicing about yourselves, is that every one of us is different in the way we play. The thing that frustrated me in my career has been so many different players telling me to do things differently, but it's entirely based upon how it works for them. So as a brass player, we have our teeth to consider. We have our muscle structure to consider. We have like so many different things. And as a wood player, I mean, it's no different. It's no different on piano if you have smaller fingers or larger fingers or whatever, right? So these are all things that we have to learn how to deal with ourselves. And as you're studying and as you're working with people, that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that like that's how it works for them. They can tell you like, oh, do these things and it will be perfect for you. But that hasn't always been the case for me, right? I've had some struggles in my playing, and really the reality of those struggles has been the only one to solve those struggles or to go anywhere with them has been myself, right? And it's from me listening to people and then taking, oh, that sounds kind of like me. Let me try that. Or, that doesn't sound like me. I'm gonna, maybe leave that aside for now, or different things, right? That's an important thing for you guys to understand about this beast that we try to tame, is that it may work entirely different for you. Right? I mean, if you look at pictures of Phil Smith, who used to be the principal trumpet in the New York Phil, and you look at the way he plays, it's off center, and his whole face is in a whole different way, right? Where if you were a teacher, you might say to him, you know what, Phil, let's get you to line it up in the center and play more like everyone else does. But you listen to that guy's tone on recordings, and it's the most beautiful tone you could ever hear, right? If you didn't see what he was doing, you'd never know. So that's my point, is that it's going to work differently for each of you. So if you're someone who's struggling with things, which we all struggle with something on this. I mean, no one gets away scot-free without having something that's difficult for them on it, right? It's a tough thing to play. Just know that you aren't alone, and some of it is going to be a little bit just trying to figure it out as you go along. Okay, I'm blabbering again. MaKenna, how about the same questions to you, and then we'll get into some playing, I promise. I want to hear how you practice.
Well, since I like to wake up early in the morning, I like to do articulation and fundamental stuff in the morning, for about an hour, and then after school, and after I do my homework, I usually do other stuff with the trumpet. I'll do some classical pieces that I would be working on, or stuff I get assigned from my lessons, for about an hour or two.
Got it. That sounds good. So it sounds like it's scheduled. You've kind of setting up a routine for yourself. You have certain things you like to do and you get done in your practice. Good. So I think a good mixture is a little bit of all three of you. When I think about what I do briefly here, when I practice, I like to set goals for myself. I like to have a goal for every practice session. Like this practice session, I'm going to work on this. Right. And whatever that thing is what I have to maintain my focus on. I can get distracted when I'm playing. Right. But if I keep it focused and I say, okay, this practice session, all I'm going to do is my key of the day. Right. I like to do a key of the day every day. And that means going up and down every scale I can possibly think of. And we have to understand there are depths of knowledge to scales that we sometimes, in the classical world, we don't think about. Let me give you an example. C major. I would say to you guys, play me your C major scale, and probably every one of you is going to play it. It's going to be fine, right? But then the second I start saying, play me the C major scale in fourths, right? That's when stuff might start to change a little bit. Like, oh, whoa, I haven't tried that before, right? Or play me it in thirds. I mean, thirds we do often. Play it in fifths, play it in sixths, right? Really knowing that C major scale is knowing all facets of that C major scale. It's being able to arpeggiate it, right? Go up and down, right? Be able to maybe, yeah. So you guys get the point, right? That like one door leads to another 100 doors that you can open with that practice of that one thing, right? So that's something to think about. Now, you guys might say, well, what does playing the C major scale in fourths really do for me? Okay, that's fair enough. But I can guarantee you there are pieces of music, and I'm looking at all of your pieces of music here that you have, and there are fourths all over the place, right? So what does it do? Well, it means that you're more familiar with those things. You know what a fourth should sound like. You know how to make sure when you're going up that you're tuning from the C up and et cetera, right? So the C to the F, right? You're getting that fourth where it needs to be, right? And all of those things, they don't do anything but add to your playing and your abilities as a player, right? So you can see how we could get dangerous with that C major scale even, right? And we put the metronome marking, and I tell you to do it in sixths, and we might be pretty slow, right? But the point is, if you're doing a key every single day, and don't just do the easy ones, don't just do C and G, and right, stick to the easy keys. Maybe you choose F sharp as your first one, and you say, you know what, I'm going to do F sharp in fourths. Here we go. I'm going to do F sharp in tritones. I'm going to do F sharp, right? I mean, these are those things, like as a jazz player, allow you to really paint more, right? I like to think of these scales in some ways as colors to paint with, right? The more colors I have to paint with, or even if I think as a composer, the more chords and things that I have in my ear, the more I have at my disposal, right? The more when I'm hearing stuff, it becomes richer and more infused with different things, right? Okay, so practice for me becomes a different thing now than maybe it was at the beginning. In the beginning, it was my teacher gives me such and such, I practice such and such. That's what it was, and I would do that exact routine. And if you've got a great teacher, that routine is usually great, right? It gets you going, it gets you doing stuff. But you can always stray from that, and you can expand upon it, right? So yeah, setting goals and trying to maintain that. Leaving space for fun, like I forget which one of you said that you liked it. I think it was Sophie. Sophie, you mentioned leaving space for fun, like fun things that you like to do. That's important because we talked about music being a special flame, like almost like like a candle you're holding. You could blow that out if you're right. If you get frustrated, or all you do is the frustrating stuff, or like nothing works well, right? You can get really in not a good place with your instrument and music sometimes, right? And that happens. I mean, it does. So that's a good thing to do, is leave yourself space to do the fun things. Like MaKenna, you talked about loving the graceful side of stuff, right? Leaving yourself space to sound like that, to work on sounding like that, right? Annabella spoke about the creative process. So for Annabella, leaving yourself space in your day to do that. I mean, if you enjoy that creative process and the ability to just do what you like to do when you want to do it, then leave yourself time each day to do that, right? You guys get the gist of that. So let's get to doing some playing. Okay, for me, and again, I speak to you guys talking from me with the realization that what I just said is what works for me may not work for you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Like if you're listening to me and you're like, oh, I don't think, I've tried that, doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But what works for me when I'm starting is a series of exercises and things that I've done for a while. So one of the unfortunate parts of myself is I've gone through some injuries in playing because I didn't play right. Okay. And it's stuff that you just work through. Yeah. So for me, pressure was my thing. I love to, I learned to play with pressure, and I got really good at playing with pressure, right? To the point where I would go out and do concertos, and if the first movement had a lot of high notes or things like that, right? What happens when you use pressure? Your lip swells up, right? Because I would get done with a practice session, and I would have cuts on the back of my lip, right? Not like bloody cuts or anything crazy, right? But I could feel where the mouthpiece was. And they were cuts because of my teeth, right? Because I was jamming the horn to my face too much. Okay, so in learning to change that, it's been a tough thing. Okay, but what I kind of slowly started to learn, and what worked for me was buzzing, right? Because I had a teacher that told me, and I never really thought about this, but that this instrument is an amplifier. That's all it is. This thing amplifies what I choose to do on the mouthpiece, right? So if I play a note, and that's something to test yourself to see, like, are you really playing on the instrument what you think you are, right? Right, we could hear all of a sudden pitch changes when I take it out of the horn. That to me says that this instrument's doing something different than I'm trying to make it do, right? So it's a good thing to practice is really you're starting off one place, and ideally when your mouthpiece comes off the horn, you're in the same place, right? Because I create that pitch from what I know in my head. Yeah. Okay. So one of the great warm-ups I've always done, and it helps me a lot, is working this sort of a pattern. And you guys will have this as a recording. So if it's something you want to try for a while, you can skip to 35 minutes in or whatever we are. Sorry, guys. And you can try this with me, right? So the first one I do is, let's see if I'm on the right pitch. Right? Just focusing on trying to work on air. Okay? What the reality is, this thing's even more relentless than this thing is, because if we don't do this right, there's no really not doing it right. It just, you don't get a tone, right? Or, right, if your buzz isn't healthy, you don't hear a note, right? If you get really good at playing your mouthpiece, you'll sound great on your trumpet. That's kind of one of the realities, because this is your instrument. Okay, it doesn't have a bell, it doesn't have valves, but it is really your instrument, and that's where your buzz is created. So if you have an airy sound, it's initiated here. Usually that's like air is getting through and it's not vibrating, right? And you're not getting vibrating in your buzz. Or if you have a double buzz, we get that every once in a while where two places are buzzing, right? It's kind of almost like, sometimes that could be being overtired, sometimes that's multiple things, but for me, it typically is being overtired or like a lack of focus, right? But what I'm able to do with the mouthpiece is really work on tone and work on air. So I like to think of air as a river, right? That never stops, okay? Like you visualize this as the thing you're trying to keep in one place, right? Like we're trying to keep it in the same place every time. And as whether we're tonguing or not, we're ideally, right, we're just almost touching that river with like, I don't know, like a bush or something, right? It should be no different than that. Yeah? Okay, so if I do that one more time. So I have a habit of not really sitting up straight, so I'm trying to change that, right? So you want to catch yourself in these practice sessions. Recording yourself is a great thing to do. If you could record yourself on video, look at how you stand. Look at what you're doing. Kind of try to take apart what it is you do. Now, don't do it to a crazy degree, because then it won't be fun for yourself, like we were talking about, right? If it's not fun, then why are you doing that kind of stuff, right? So I'm forcing myself and my ear to know what that scale sounds like and to be able to work it up and down. Now, if you're doing that and the pitch gets all weird, then guess what's happening on your trumpet is believe it or not, you're kind of doing that on your horn, right? So ideally, when I go to the trumpet, it should be the same thing. What I love about it is it always feels so much better on the trumpet. Like when I do those buzzing exercises, it's like, because you're relating what you're doing on the horn to what really makes the sound, right? If you're not buzzing and in your practice, it's definitely something to do. Okay. So that's that. So what I'll do is I'll work that all the way down. And keep all the way down to the F sharp, right? So I have a habit of my low range being like really flat on this trumpet. So having to work on that, right? And what I'll do typically is I'll have a tuner out and not as often as I should a metronome out, right? Set a pulse for yourself, because what am I doing then? I'm working on pitch. I'm working on vibration of my lip and buzz. I'm working on time, right? So you're making the most of that practice session. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things that you're kind of having to do. And if you record yourself on top of that, you can listen to it afterwards and say, you know what, I love the way I sound. I need to do this more often, or you know what, I don't like that. I need to work on it more. And what I'll do is I've got kind of this battle board of a dry erase board that I have, okay? And I'll put things on that. You know, if I listen to something, I'll say, you know what, that's this particular thing isn't going well. That needs to be added to a practice session, right? Where I was talking about goals. So my goal might be, cleaning up a scale or getting myself really good at this one scale and being able to work it up to a crazy degree, right? Okay, so warm up buzzing, breathing. Lastly, before I let you guys play, going from being 10 years old to now, I would suggest that all of you add stretching your fingers and your arm and all of that, because the older you get, it definitely doesn't get easier. And what happens to a lot of us musicians is we develop sometimes nerve things in our arms without even realizing it. These things can be heavy. And what we don't realize is that the easiest, like the most strain-free thing for your arm is honestly when it's kind of straight, right? Because what happens in the elbow joint is there's the ulnar nerve, there's some nerves in there. And then when we do this, we kind of, we do things to those nerves. We stretch them in different ways, right? And after years of repetition of playing a certain way, right? It's a muscle like anything. That's why warm-ups are important. Like if you don't warm up and you just go straight into playing crazy stuff all the time, then yeah, it's a muscle that you're working with muscles, right? It's no different than being football or basketball or all those things. They say stretch. When I was younger, I used to think, why do I need to stretch? Because I just feel great. And you do, right? And that's good. But when you get older, like the idea is that you continue to play, right? So 10 years from now, you don't want to, you want to be setting up good habits, right? So stretch those fingers out. Find some good exercises for yourself. For me, when I had my nerve issues in my elbow from being, probably honestly not stretching it, that's what I was kind of told by the lady. She's like, do you ever stretch before you play the trumpet? And I went, no, I never learned that. Right? I mean, the band directors don't usually say, everyone stretch, let's stretch before we begin, right? That's not really, but it's a muscular thing we do, right? So stretching those every time you play, probably after too, right? Being able to stretch those fingers, like the exercises that I was given was stretching the ulnar nerve, right? Because that was the one that I had issues with, okay? Just keep that in mind, right? The things you can do. And I think pianists do this, right? Don't you learn? I think I used to see people doing that kind of stuff, but as trumpet players, we did it. It's just like pick the horn up and play, or pick the horn up, right? But yeah, it's time that we kind of change our minds a little bit and start thinking of like, well, I'd like to play in 50 years from now. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, I want to hear you guys because I'm not leaving a lot of time for that. So who is up first? I think it was MaKenna, right? So MaKenna, I'd love to hear some of the Trumpeter's Lullaby. Why don't you play me your favorite part of it? I'd love to hear a little.
I was starting to talk and I realized I was muted.
Ah, no worries. What's your favorite part?
I don't know. I like the whole song.
All right. Then let's take it from the top.
Okay.
Great. That's great. So what do you love most about this piece?
I like how it's like there's like a main theme kind of.
Yeah. It's got a melody that's memorable. It's the kind of thing we could sing back, right? Probably every one of us on here, we could probably sing that back. Okay. What else? So we got a theme.
How there's different kind of like dynamics to it, and how there's also articulate spots, and then there's legato spots, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got like a lot of nice articulations, a lot of really cool places to phrase and be musical, right? And in my opinion, being musical is what makes music worth what it is, right? The thought that we can tell a story through music, right? And so the important thing that I used to do when I was you guys' age was to think of a story for every piece I played. If I could research a story and find a story about a certain piece, or learn a little bit about a composer and why they wrote a piece, sometimes there's already a story there. I mean, there's always a story there, right? I'm sure Annabella would say the same thing as writing music, that when we write for some sort of a reason. Maybe it's an emotion, maybe we're not quite sure sometimes what it is, right? But every composer has a reason why they write, and an inspiration for why they write, right? So I would take maybe that into consideration on here, MaKenna, and when you're thinking of how to play it, would be, well, what was, doing some research. I mean, so you guys do research projects in school where you're supposed to research a subject. This is a good real life practice of that. Well, let me do a little research on A Trumpeter's Lullaby. Let me learn more about what Leroy Anderson was trying to do on this piece, why he wrote it, who he wrote it for, right? Because all that stuff is, right, it comes into play here, right? So, but what I would say to you in regards to your practice of this, and what I would do to kind of maybe take it to the next level, okay? So what I hear right now is, remember we were talking about that beautiful stream of or river that we want for air. And so what I hear is your river gets a little bit choppy sometimes, right? And it makes it difficult sometimes for it to have more of a nice gentle flow. Because you were talking about how you like graceful and that sort of beauty. So what I want to hear you try to do is to think of keeping this more like a steady stream. Now, how do you work on something like that? Get rid of the tongue entirely from the process. All right. So I haven't played this thing in forever. So let's see. Like, we just take that much and we're focusing just on air and trying to keep it, right, a steady stream. And then what we do is we would add the tongue back, because once we know that we're keeping the air moving, then you add the tongue back in, you'll keep more of the tone that you're wanting to have. So try that for me. Try just it's weird because you have to pretend like you're tonguing it, right? But you're going to hold the note for as long as you would normally have to hold it for, really. Right? Does that make sense, what I did? Or is it kind of weird?
Sort of.
Sort of. I'll do it one more time, okay?
Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm getting rid of the tongue, and it's all one thing. So no tongue at all, just oh, almost like you're singing it that way. So give it a shot. See what happens. Try to do that for me. I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, so what do we notice about what you just did? Did you notice anything? Like what was hard about it? Probably keeping a steady tone.
Steady tone. Good. Okay. So that's something to work on this, I think, is to hit each of those pitches. And let's pretend like we don't have to worry about time at all, right? And if there's something about what you're doing that you're like, oh, that didn't feel easy, then working that part until it does feel easy, right? Because once it's easy doing what we just did, it becomes much easier to go in. Because if I can just hit it the same way with air as I would do it normally, then the tongue is just kind of, right? It becomes an easier thing for me. But the second I remove air from the equation is the second that things start to get a little rocky, right? The other thing I would say is we have a habit when we practice of not holding stuff as long as we want and not holding rests or not pretending like rests don't really matter, right? So like in that, let's see, like the fourth bar you played, you did what most people do in a practice session is like, oh, there's rest. Let's just come on the next area. But don't do that, right? Because you want to practice the way ultimately you would perform. The more, because we were talking about how you get habits, right? So the more you practice the way you're going to perform, the more you will perform the way you practice, which hopefully is good, right? But if you practice in a way that is not like the way you perform, when you go to perform this piece, it becomes the first time you're ever doing it, right? In reality, it really becomes the first time you're ever doing it. So it's really, really important. So my teacher at Northwestern in Chicago used to say to me, okay, stand up and perform this for me. Right? And it would be like, oh gosh, it was uncomfortable because it puts you in a different frame of mind. Even what I'm doing right now, when I'm sitting here, I would not be playing this piece sitting down unless I had like leg trouble or something and I had to sit down to the front of the stage, right? I would be standing here. Right. So in reality, each one of you, I mean, you got to look at the way you practice. The more you practice the way you would actually perform, the better you will be when you go out there doing it. So I like to practice when I'm getting ready for my jazz shows. I will set up a stand. I'll set up my music. I'll set it up like the show would be. Right. And then I will sit there and stand there and I'll play. I'll play through the entire program straight. Sometimes I'll just do a straight through and I'll listen back and say, ooh, okay, that's what I need to work on, right? But I think it's a great piece, MaKenna. I think you're definitely moving in a wonderful direction with it. I think it's just, I think for you, if I would focus on one thing, I would say it would be air. Getting your air to do more of the work for you. Yeah?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
I know we didn't get as much time due to my blabbering as I wished, but and I would love for you. Hopefully I can share my email with you guys. I'd love for you to stay in touch and I'd love to hear more of the piece. So if you want to send me a recording of it or whatever you want advice, anything, send it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. Then we'll move on to Annabella. I think you were next, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
All right.
I can just start at the beginning and then we can take it from there.
Good. Sounds good. Great. Awesome. Love your tone. I love, so when you're getting ready to start to think about playing, what are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about sound because if I have the sound concept, then, all of the fundamentals and technique will follow.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think sound is what you want to sound like. I think the body will do a lot of amazing things to make you sound that way, right? Great. Um, so I want to do a little bit of the same thing with you for this opening segment of this piece. Uh, Give me the same exact thing that we were doing with MaKenna. No tongue, and don't count the rest. Just consider that holding the note through. I want to hear what it sounds like when you play straight through it.
Okay.
Good. Okay, I want you to think what I'm hearing. This is really hard to describe, but especially when you're coming from the second measure, you're on B flat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at the second measure, when you're coming down from the E flat to the A flat, right? What I hear is your air changing the way you're blowing as opposed to the air being straight. I want you to pretend like, do you have a piece of paper in front of you or anywhere over there?
I think so. Here it is. Oh, no. Maybe I do. Okay, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
So I want you to like hold it to the side so we can see. And then I want you to try to keep that in one place with your airstream. So like, yeah, just start blowing it and see if you can keep it steady in one place.
Okay.
Okay. That's what I want your air to feel like at this beginning part. Does it feel
Okay.
different than that?
Yeah, I see what you mean, like where it sounds like I'm constantly adjusting my airflow and probably
That,
my embouchure too.
what I hear to a certain this da 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 right more
Mm-hmm.
which to me it's it's not bad. What it is I think we can get you like I think healthier airflow, and I think ultimately it will help stuff come out even better.
Okay.
So I want you to do that paper thing one more time to remember the feeling of it. Okay. Pick up your horn, and I want you to think of your air doing that straight. When you need a breath, you need a breath. So if it means you're breathing in a different spot, don't worry about being musical, all of that. We're focusing on straight air. Because
Okay.
really, this phrase here, it doesn't really come down until that 2/4 measure, right? It
Yeah.
needs right. And what I'm hearing is different than that. So give me give me a little more air. Let's hear what it sounds like.
And you said, sorry, did you want me to continue where I was slurring everything or just play it as normal?
Let's do slurring one more time and then
Okay.
right into tonguing. So slurring with that
Perfect.
same feel you just had with the piece of paper. Better, better. What I'm still hearing is these and I know I'm being super critical, so I'm just pushing you to the next level here. So what I'm hearing is the low notes are acting almost as trampolines, da ya da 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 da, which means to me your air is going right instead of it being straight. So if I think of it more as like straight through, now it's like that's not the way I would probably play this. It's not very musical right now, but it's straight air. So what's happening is you're giving different amounts of air to different things. still.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so could you talk more about the trampoline thing? Because, often, especially when we're starting out with music, they say, use the bottom note as a trampoline to get to the higher notes. So is this like a different situation
I
or?
think so. So when we're soloists, so it's interesting. When we think of being a soloist, what are we really trying to be as a trumpet soloist? We're trying to be a vocalist, right? And you hardly ever hear a vocalist go da, right? It's typically da 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 da, right? So think of the way you might sing this da 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 dee da dee da da dee, right? Uh, that's kind of more of the approach is trying to make it musical, right? And trying to make it sing as opposed to da ya da 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 da. Now you might do that, right? It kind of depends. Like that's where we want to do some research on what Canon was trying to do with this piece. So I see what copyright 1956. We'd have to do some research, right? But what I'm trying to get you to do is it's not that we're not trying to be musical, but I want your focus to be on keeping your air straight and not on individual air for each note, depending on which note is most important. Because what that says to me is that you're doing more work than you have to do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense to want to focus on the larger phrase so that when you do want to, change dynamics and crescendo, then it's more apparent. So,
Yeah, so just I know this is weird, but try it again. Give me the same thing. Nice and let's do the legato for like maybe let's do the I don't know first few measures. Your decision as to like how many you go, and then after that I want to hear like with the tongue,
oh, okay. Got it.
straight air. Good, even better. So what I would work on, Annabella, would be I would record yourself and listen for those times. Yeah, like where because it's a musical thing that we do hear players do, but it's at least in the vocalist I hear it's very kind of more rare. Like when you listen to Maria Callas and these people have this healthy, beautiful like ways they sing and right it's more like big picture airflow than it is right that more of
Yeah.
that and I'm super exaggerating, okay, because it's not that apparent, but I just think that if that's something if you worked on it I think it would be easier for you. So like the more I keep my air straight and kind of keep that as the driving thing, and the tongue kind of just basically, I mean, it doesn't really get in the way because the air's so right there. The other thing I would say is careful on the 64s. Right? If we're going to think about what that would be, right? Right. But again, I mean, interpretation is something that people always do differently on pieces like this. Great. Gosh, I know I really didn't leave you guys enough time to play. Really sounds great, Annabelle. I think you're doing great. I think my big thing with you would be trying to make it easier on yourself, ultimately with air, which I realize it might not seem important, but like when you think about something like the Hindemith Sonata, which you may have played, the only way to really get through that thing and right is like healthy air. You need healthy air. If you kind of Mickey Mouse every note in that, what you're doing is you're kind of putting more of the work on your face, when really all your face is doing is changing the aperture to a certain extent, right, to different notes. The air is the thing that drives it, right? The air is the thing that so just using that to its fullest capacity. Yeah, my 2 cents on that very opening part. Sorry, we didn't have very long. Okay.
No, that's
Great to know,
perfect.
though.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Sophie, let's hear yours now. Where do you want to start for yours?
Can I do the section after B?
My part doesn't have a B, it has a 1, but you can start wherever you like.
It's the fast floating section after the 11 measures of rest.
Got it. Okay. Good. Yeah. The weird things that we deal with Zooms and things like that. So there were parts where on for me that it cut out and then you would super sped up, but because it was the software, right? It was like I was like, holy crud! All right, but yeah. Great. Okay. So just in remembering about there were a few things. So I think the importance of internal like tick and clock on these things, right? It's funny because of what I do. I do a ton of film and TV music, and I have these clicks and these things just in my ear all the time. And what I notice is like all I start to hear is stuff that like gets out of clicks, right? So yes, you're playing with a piano player at this point, and I think they have more of the role of melody during that section, and you're more of just like an elaborative kind of thing on top of it, right? So really, you have to hold to. You don't have much flexibility with time, right? So try. Man, I don't know where to tell you to go on there. I'll stop you in the middle, and I don't mean to be rude if I do. But like, play me a little bit again, and I want you to just keep that in mind. I want you to pretend like you hear that piano going on in the back of your head and play with it. Okay. So already a little bit, right? Where so you want to, yeah, it's tough because especially when that lip trill, since it's tough to do, that's going to be where you lose time, right? But if you think about any other instrument like a piano or anything else, it would just be right there in the pocket, right? So the things that make what we do on this instrument a little tougher is that like, okay, well, we have to complete that lip trill and right all the facets that go along with that, but also it needs to stay in time, right? So even when we're not playing, again, it's that practice the way we want to perform. If you practice this and you are right in time, when time comes for you to perform it, you will be right in time, right? What you don't want to have happen is have to rely upon that poor pianist to have to be like, okay, I have the melody now, but Sophie's not quite done with that lip trill, so let's hold that melody back until she comes in, right? And we get in that habit, right? We're used to playing with accompanists, and really they do a great job at staying with us, but they shouldn't have to, because really the collaboration there is trumpet and piano. It's right. It's a concerto, sure, okay, and it's right, but oftentimes we play sonatas. We play things that are much more than just accompaniment, right? And that collaboration is an important part of it. So it should be making music together, coming together in a way where you're both, where you need to be, right? And it's great. It sounds great. It really does. I'm noticing a few of the same kind of things that I was talking with the other two about, just in regards to air, right? You want to, and pardon me for all three of you, because my teacher at Northwestern used to just bug me about air all the time. And so now I guess I'm passing it down to you guys as well. But the importance of it being your fuel for getting through things. When you can, I like to think of this too, because my teacher used to say, take full breaths, like as big of a breath as you can every time you breathe. Right? And play with that, like use that fuel that you have to go through this. So Sophie, I want you to play the same thing, and I want you to think just like I was working with, Annabella, on trying to kind of, I don't know, aim straight through something as opposed to up or down, right? We don't use more air for up notes or more air for lower notes. We give it all, right, one stream of air. So let me hear what that sounds like, even if it's slower, because I know it's more technical and stuff. Okay. And so sections like that are going to be where it's the hardest to work that air into, because and it's the same thing for me. Like I always like to keep the Carnival of Venice in my fingers, right? But like I have habits from learning it the first time when I was your guys' age or whatever, right? That I still have today because I practiced it so much that way that I can't get it back. So I have these things that like I want my air to be able to move slowly, or like not slowly, but straight through that. And right now I can feel myself going right as I'm playing it, because I literally practice it so much. And so the only way to do it even that's not good. It's a little bit better, but like I have to work it slow. So working these things for all three of you, it's not the kind of thing that you can, right? I can't work on air and play that Carnival of Venice as fast as I would normally do it. I'm not working on air then. I'm working on just playing it, right? If I'm working on air, it's slowing the whole thing down. So play me that tough section that we were just about to approach. How fast are we going? Something like that. Is that kind of what you were taking it? Something like that? See, the difference is that, like singing it like that. Right? If I can keep my air moving like that, that's the key. And what you'll wind up with is a healthier sound. So try it slow like that one part. And I want to hear air during those parts that normally it's like more finessed, right? But I want to hear the air moving through that. Okay, stop there. Da, 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 da. I heard the air. Da, da, dee, da, da, dee. Da, da, dee, da, da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, dee, da, like all connected. Think of getting, sorry, I wasn't clear. Think of getting rid of the rest. Good. Keep going. Sorry. And whenever you need a breath, it does like don't feel like you're unmusical. Just take a breath when you need it. But I want you to see what you could do with that full air. So do it again, and then take the biggest breath you've ever taken in your life and begin. Right? We should always breathe that way. There's no reason we shouldn't. Sometimes we'll pick up the horn and be like, like this small little breath. It's like, why? Give yourself a full tank and then use it. All right. Good. Yeah. And when we play softer, so some people think, oh, softer means less air. It doesn't, right? If we want that beautiful tone, we need that same like approach to the air, even on the softer stuff, you know? Good. I mean, already when you came in on the first note, I was like, whoa, totally different sound, like healthier, bigger, right? So why not all the time, right? Those are the little things that aren't so little, right? So try. So we're kind of jumping way ahead here, but I want you to try to play that passage more up to speed, thinking of what we just did, and let's see if it makes any difference for you, I guess. Okay, good, good. So, okay, I think I don't know if you feel like it's hard because I think we skipped too many steps. We probably would have wanted to, a few metronome markings and right, etc. But you get the gist. And what I hear when you breathe is not like a Darth Vader sound, which it should be. I hear like more upper lung. You want the like if any of you have ever taken like opera singer or singer like singing lessons, they teach you that's like one of the first things they teach them is like you don't breathe from up here, you breathe from low, right? You breathe from as low as you can breathe and you fill up. Yeah, we are no different. Right, just as their fuel is for them, all they're doing is vibrating their vocal cords. We're vibrating our lips with this thing, right? So I want to say same thing one more time, and I want to hear Darth Vader for every one of your breaths, like deep, right? And I realize like it's going to be weird because it seems like you don't have time for that, but I think you do. So try it again. Big breaths. Oh. Okay, I think that's something I would work on. I don't know if you maybe breathe some through nose and mouth. I can't tell. It's hard because I'm not with you. But I hear like a higher pitch, like almost like kind of when you're breathing in instead of right, like a quick when we think about like what you would do if you were running or like if you guys have probably all run at some point, right? When you run, you can't take those small breaths because like you're out of breath. You're like gasping for air, right? But it's like you're like right, and that's really what trumpeting is. It's being in a constant state of like fear for not being able to breathe. Sounds bad, but like when you do this correctly, all three of you, when you're breathing right, every time you take at first what will happen is you'll get the pins and needles thing, like you've exhaled too much air and you've breathed too much air in kind of stuff. Right? That just is telling you you're doing it right. That's what my teacher used to tell me that, right? Because I used to be like, whoa, I'm getting right jitters in my fingers and stuff. It's because like I wasn't used to doing it. Okay, so for all three of you, I would say air is huge. And I'm sorry I didn't get as much time to work with you each. But I would love to. I mean, seriously, I would love to hear more of these pieces, and if you guys want to send them, and I'd be happy to just give you my 2 cents for what they're worth and all that stuff. But good job, all three of you, really good job. I think you're on the right path. I think it's all about, it's all about the music. It's all about what you want to say to it. And I didn't get enough into that with all three of you. Is like, what are you trying to say with this piece? If you don't have an answer for that, then like that's something to think about. Right? Because you need to have something you're trying to say with it, right? You have to look up Oscar and understand his world, right? And understand like why he wrote this piece and what was going on during the time period. Like he lived through kind of an interesting time, right? So like being able to just go through and understand that stuff. So when you play the piece, you can make more sense of it. Because you're really, I mean, you're trying to bring to life something that these composers, they wrote with their heart and souls, right? I mean, every ounce of what they did, just no different than what you guys are doing on your instrument. I mean, it went into writing this. So you guys have to figure out what that means to you and what you want to share through it. Because ideally, I should be able to listen to every one of you play your piece and be like, wow, okay, you're focusing, like, this is what I got out of what you played. Not just, oh yeah, you hit all the notes. Yeah? Like, it's got to be more than the notes. It has to say something to us, right? And that's why I was saying, like, tell a story. It doesn't matter if you're an orchestra and you're sitting back at DYAO and you're the trumpet section and right, he tells you to play a certain thing, that's fine, right? But play it with a reason behind what you're doing. Have a story for what your part is, right? And oftentimes, I mean, these things, you can find these things. You like, you know, you're a fanfare. Well, you might represent something more military-esque, right? And you know what your role is then. But you might also have like a soaring thing, like thinking of like an American in Paris or like Gershwin, or right, a beautiful soaring melody where you represent, I mean, in some ways, everything going on in the time period in New York or in Paris or wherever, right? So you have to think about that stuff, and it has to seep into the way you play. So we talked a lot about air. We talked a lot about practice. We talked a lot about some of the basic things that to help you guys, but ultimately that's what it's all about. Okay. Very last thing I'll say is we had a master class at Northwestern while he was still alive, the infamous Bud Herseth, right? Chicago Symphony principal player for all those years. And he came in and he played for us. He was the teacher of our teachers. And the most fascinating thing he said, now granted, he said this as a player that had just about as much you could have, I mean, healthy stuff going on in your playing as you possibly could, right? He said, everything you need to study is in the music you play. So his concept was, you know what, worry less about doing fundamentals every day and worry more about like the music and what you're trying to say with it. Now, again, he's saying that as a guy who already played, like, I mean, people dream to play like he does, right? Now, right? So he's coming from a place where everything was working, okay? Do you have to work on fundamentals? Yes, I mean, we need to work on fundamentals. But I think his point is you can find your fundamentals in here. And in some ways, that's the focus of what we were talking about today is like, well, you can work on your air in your pieces. You can work on your time in your pieces, right? You can work on your intonation. You can work on all of these things, okay? And I agree with them. I mean, you can really find all those things in the music. So get a little bit out of trying to focus on making it perfect and more into what you're trying to say with it. And then when you know what you're trying to say and you know where you're going with it, then it's using all the tools you have to get there, if that makes sense. But if you don't have a there and you're just playing a piece of music, you're like, I'll hit all the notes and that's that. I mean, it's not going to necessarily mean much to someone who hears it because we're not hearing your interpretation. Yeah. Okay. I already kept you guys super late. Sorry. Any questions? Anyone have questions they have? Open it up.
Who did you study with at Northwestern?
So I studied with Barbara Butler and Charlie Geyer. Yeah, then they're funny. I don't know if if you guys ever get the chance to meet with them or play for them, they're phenomenal players, and they both do different things. You know, Charlie, I mean, but they're both awesome soloists. They're both awesome orchestral players. Yeah, good people too. Yeah. Anything else? You can ask anything you want.
When was the last time you did a live performance?
Last time I did a live performance was about a month ago. I did a performance with my jazz sextet. I've got another one coming up Saturday, but it's probably looking like it might be the last one for a while, given what's going on. It's hard for us as trumpet players with the whole mask thing and all of that, because we can't really play a mask or wear a mask, play a mask. You can't really wear a mask and play, right? And that becomes difficult. Yeah, but that's that. We'll get through this though. I think, if anything, it's given me more time to practice and focus on doing the things that I need, sorry, somehow I started a piece of music on here. Yeah. Anything else? Any other curiosities?
I was gonna ask, can we get your email?
You can. I'm gonna type it in right here now on the chat, and take it and stay in touch with me. Oops, I just wrote that to Kelly privately by accident. Kelly's probably like, "What? Why are you sending that to me?" All right, here it is. And you can write me anytime. I hope you guys stay in touch, actually. It's nice to, it's a special thing to be an alum of an organization, and when you've been there and you've played in groups. It's just going to be the same for you guys for high school and for college, right? They're warm leads for you guys in the music world, right? And that'll become an important thing as you guys get out there, is like your connections, like who you stay in contact with, because sometimes you get work through those things, And I would love to stay in touch with you all and hear all the different cool, awesome musical things you're doing and all of that. And if you have questions, or if you're like wondering more about what we talked about, or you want, please, I'm always around, and it'd be my pleasure to help.
Thank you so much for doing this, Sean. And it's always great to have our alums come back and work with our students. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And nice job, ladies. Thanks for putting yourselves out there, and keep up the good work.
Indeed. You guys did great. Keep it up. Keep going.